Uncle Doug.
Sup?
Look, I don't always know how to direct my life. I don't always know.
Always implies that you sometimes do.
Exactly.
By don't always, I mean never.
Right.
No.
We all need a little direction.
Yeah, and sometimes I think, especially in these spooky days, I think there are people, wiser people than myself, in other realms that might be able to be helpful.
That's just a true.
That's just common sense.
Yeah.
So, but the question is, how do you get that information from them? How do you squeeze them for that knowledge?
Yeah.
And I think Uncle Mark might be able to help us. What do you think?
I think Milton Bradley might have something to say about that.
Yeah, exactly.
So you were close. So, fellow uncles, as Uncle Dan mentioned in this episode, I think this episode will publicly post on All Hallows. I don't know why I can't say that. All Hallows Eve of this year of our Dark Lord 2018.
Yeah,
I thought I would delve into a kind of holy technology, and it's a blandly common piece of holy technology, one that can be bought for $21.37 at America's most satanic of retailers, Walmart.
Oh, sure.
Yes, my friends, I refer to Hasbro's modern version of the old spirit board, the Oujia board.
I love it.
Yeah. So,
spirit board.
It's funny because
that may be the stupidest phrase of all time.
Spirit board or talking board was another name.
Oh, really?
Sure.
So, Uncle Doug, as an aside, Uncle Doug and I were just in Washington, D.C. last week, and we stayed in the most amazingly spooky old Victorian Airbnb.
Ooh, fun.
Was crazy.
And it was kind of late at night. It was super dark, and we were trying to scare ourselves. So I actually tweeted out, if anybody on Capitol Hill in Washington D.C. has a Ouija board, I need it. So we didn't get any takers.
No, and I couldn't sleep that night because that little girl wouldn't stop singing.
I hate it when that happens. Just shut up. I get it. You were murdered in the house.
You have to turn the TV off before the static comes on. That's how she comes out. So it is odd that something that still very much haunts the fever dreams of Christians, at least in America, I don't know if this is true elsewhere, and as we'll see, it's taken as seriously as a sizzling stick of dynamite by what's likely a majority in this country, is available in the toy section right between Monopoly and Mousetrap.
Right?
But such are the absurdities of believing in the supernatural, very serious people who are absolutely certain a toy can summon devils from under the Earth's surface. So, what are the origins of this silly but still kind of spooky thing?
The yes game.
That's right.
Can I call it that?
Yeah. So
I don't know about this.
you know a little bit more about this than I had been led to believe.
No.
By the spirits.
I'm literally just going by the title of the thing.
Well, I'll demonstrate your correctness that you the spirits told you exactly what the meaning of this thing is.
Indeed.
So, Ouija board enthusiasts like to say that its origins are, shrouded in the mists of time. Like it was a discovery made in the cave of some alchemist on the Silk Road by Marco Polo. But no. There were some kind of ancient, of course, in different cultures, there were all these ancient kind of scrying and soothsaying methods. And one of them was automatic writing. Mm-hmm. And we talked about that in episode 42 with David Icke, that lunatic,
right?
A little bit. And automatic writing is just kind of a one-man Ouija board, right?
Right. You just start writing stuff and then claim it wasn't you.
You're speaking in tongues on paper.
Yes.
So
and that tongue is English.
Right. Some of those things did exist. Those methods of mediums contacting the other side did exist, but nothing in the form of like the Ouija board, which was a really tremendous leap forward in the technology.
Yes. What a time it was.
Yeah.
I just want to go back to the fact that he said there's Ouija board enthusiasts.
Oh my God, there's a museum.
Is that really?
Yes. There's an actual museum, and I can't remember where it is, but they have like Ouija boards from across time and spirit boards from across time.
Wow.
But back to the origins. We've talked about the birth of the spiritualist movement in the U.S. anyway, when we discussed the spooky Fox sisters a week or two ago, and Helena Blavatsky and the Theosophists. So it was about the same time, around 1840, that the first talking board appears. It had the familiar alphabet and numerals 0 through 9. the yes and no. But the planchette, which is the thing we recognize as the little heart-shaped thingy with the lens in it that slides around on the board, had 2 wheels and a pencil. It was kind of a weird mess, but it allowed the medium the freedom to interpret the chicken scratch any way they liked.
I see.
And in any case, they didn't really catch on much. So now here's a quick little aside. The little sliding around doohickey, the planchette, that sounds like a common enough word. And I figured, they've adopted it from some other usage to describe this thing.
That sounds plausible.
That is all a planchette is.
Oh, really?
Is the sliding around thing on a Ouija board.
Okay. It's got its own word.
It's got its own special
great.
word.
It's not, I would have probably, I didn't know that term, so I would have called it like the stylus or something. I'm not sure. But planchette. Huh. It also sounds a little bit like a garden squash of some sort.
Or like the iron you put on the stove to heat up to
right.
Sure.
And it's French for little plank.
Oh.
That's sweet. Oh. So anyway, I just thought that was weird. So anyway, the spiritual movement really got turbocharged by the end of a little-known historical event, the American Civil War. As most people know, the death toll and the general chaos was unbelievably traumatic to the nation. And with so many people so recently killed, there was a huge upswell in people trying to contact the dead. If you were in the seance business was good. So this is even nuttier. A very popular form of, I'm using air quotes, contacting the dead at the time was called table spinning or table tipping. And people would sit around. We've all seen these kind of Victorian images, right? People would sit around a table and get all trancy and ask to contact some dead so-and-so, and a medium would always be at the table. This was not the amateur medium thing had not happened yet.
Right.
So, so a medium would always be sitting there, and the table would tip or spin.
Strangely, always away from that medium, whose knees were not visible.
Oddly enough, yeah. It would tip or spin in reaction to questions or as the alphabet was recited. And as Dan inferred, the tricks used to make it happen were simple and rudimentary. You'd get a toe under the leg of the table, or you'd use your knee. And there were even these hooks. They would wear these kind of elegant sleeves, right? And they would have their hands on the table, but they would have these hook things strapped to their forearms, these wire hooks that would slide under the table, under their
So it
cuffs.
could look like the table was moving.
So, yeah, your hand is atop the table, and yet the table is rising up to you.
Right.
Amazing.
So,
Mysteries of the underworld.
if you can imagine waiting for a table to tip as you got to the letter W was a little time consuming. And so most of those started just focusing on yes or no questions,
right?
Like the Fox sisters, because it was just getting exhausting. And
imagine trying to summon Xerxes.
Lift the table 15 times if the answer is
and
sponge cake.
Shysting people in seances was a volume business, so you couldn't have it take all night. So,
right.
So this is why the talking board was created, allowing much more detailed information to flow from the other side. As originally designed, the medium would have attendees place their hands on the planchette with their own, and they would be the initiating movement. Now, remember, very few people who went to contact dead relatives were skeptical. Like Fox Mulder, they wanted to believe.
Right.
So then, eventually, this businessman named Elijah Bond saw dollars to be made selling a consumer version of the medium's device. So he patented a version in 1890 and began selling them. They didn't really catch on much until 10 years later. His employee, William Fund, took over the manufacturing and rebranded the talking board as the Ouija board. He claimed the name had been revealed to him while playing as the Egyptian word for good luck, which it is not.
No.
The Arabic for good luck is either, and I'm going to kill this, Ichaza Sedan,
perfect,
or Bil Tawfiq, depending on the situation. So the spirits got that wrong somehow. Then maybe later a more Arabic fluent spirit told him this, because he later said the meaning of Ouija, as Uncle Dan rightly surmised from the spirits, is a conflation of the French and German words for yes.
Yeah.
Much closer to the truth.
Oui and ja.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's Reformed Egyptian. Maybe that's what.
It's a reformed all the way to French and German.
It's so reformed, it's not even Egyptian. So the Ouija board cut out the middleman of the shyster medium, and and allowed generations of kids and not so kids to shyster themselves on chilly October evenings everywhere. It's kind of a ghost story in a box.
Well, it's amazing. People do actually shyster themselves, as you're saying,
and shite themselves.
Yeah, well, there's that too. But like, it's one of those things that people can actually trick themselves into thinking they're being communicated with. You don't even need someone to be leading it.
It's funny. I thought I went to buy one yesterday.
Oh,
because I thought it would be kind of a hoot to do one on the show.
Yeah.
Make you guys play, and I would do a sports play-by-play. So I go to this game shop, right? This total D&D game shop, and the guy said, "Oh yeah, I've totally got a Ouija board." We went to find it; it was sold out, or something mysterious happened.
Ooh.
And I said, "Oh, that's too bad. I really wanted to get one." He's like, "Well, come back next week." I'm like, "It'll be too late." And he's like, "This is like the comic book guy in The Simpsons, right? Sitting behind the counter, and he's like, "Well, just so you know, I've seen a lot of bad shit happen to people with Ouija boards." So be careful. It's so common. It is so common, and as I'll talk about in the end of the segment, how life and death serious people are about these.
Well,
things.
you sent a flag out to me. You're like, hey, will you look around up by you? And I went to a department store up by me that has a game aisle, and I was standing there looking at all the games, and an attendant walked by, and I said, "Do you guys have a Ouija board?" And he was just like, "Oh my God, no."
Okay.
Yeah. You scared the shit out of him.
We could just make one.
So, like,
I've got a Sharpie and a piece of wood.
Exactly.
Like I said, it's basically a ghost story in a box, and if you believe in the thing, I guess it's a much cheaper version of the Hellraiser Lament configuration, right? So the question is, how does it work? It can be only one of two ways. Either the afterlife is an infinite Victorian parlor where Harry Houdini and Aleister Crowley just hang around, sipping vermouth until someone calls them through the veil with a board game, or there's a rational explanation that doesn't require eternity to be a drawing room from an Agatha Christie novel. So I have a hunch it's the latter explanation. I'm going to go out on a limb here, guys.
Oh, my God.
Follow me if you dare. There is something called the ideomotor response or ideomotor reflex.
Is that where idiot comes from?
No, in fact, it's not at all. It's it's basically...
But it can affect idiots.
Yeah.
Ideo meaning idea, motor meaning movement. So to save ourselves some time, we'll call it by its abbreviation, IMR. The IMR describes how oftentimes unconscious or involuntary motor responses occur in relation to a thought or having a mental image. It also describes the idea that one can be susceptible to cues in such a way that one might not think they are acting in a physical way, although they are. So classically, when the first person to exert pressure and move the planchette is suddenly followed by the others, each one's certain they're not making it move, when in fact they all are.
Right.
They're just responding to a cue.
And then they're sure that they're not moving it to a certain thing.
Right.
When in fact, their brain has had an impulse to something.
Right.
And their body is just sort of like trying to make that happen without their being aware.
Right.
They're being aware of it.
Right. So, here's a description of the IMR effect, the ideomotor reflex, by Professor Terence Hines from his really interesting 2003 book, Pseudoscience and the Paranormal. He says, the planchette is guided by unconscious muscular exertions like those responsible for table movements, referring to the table tilting. Nonetheless, in both cases, the illusion that the object, table or planchette, is moving under its own control is often extremely powerful and sufficient to convince many people that spirits are truly at work. The unconscious muscle movements responsible for the moving tables and Ouija board phenomena seen at seances are examples of a class of phenomena due to what psychologists call a dissociative state. A dissociative state is one in which consciousness is somehow divided or cut off from some aspect of the individual's normal cognitive, motor, or sensory functions. So what he's saying at the end there is that the fuel that drives the IMR is a desire to believe.
Right.
Surely this makes sense in kids at a sleepover that are very much looking for a scary experience.
You're moving it. No, you're moving it.
Totally. It's perfect for that.
Yeah, they play the Ouija board, they tell ghost stories, and they say Bloody Mary 3 times in the mirrors, right? Because they're definitely wanting to be scared.
Yeah.
And they'll put themselves, they put themselves immediately into that place.
Yeah.
They're susceptible to the IMR. And I suppose fully adult people like those that were desperate to contact tragically lost loved ones like Civil War widows for sure wanted to believe.
Yeah.
And unscrupulous quacks were only too happy to oblige their desperation for a fee. But then there is that massive group of non-children, non-mourning, fully grown adults who would shit a sacramental brick if they were in the same room with a Ouija board, just
Right.
like the guy in the toy aisle yesterday, right? And by that I mean religious men and women who have driver's licenses and bank accounts and college educations, etc.
And get to vote.
Yeah, and have children and a lifetime of religious indoctrination about virgin births and empty tombs and floating zoos has them pre-primed to believe just about anything, right?
Right.
So why we won't know if they're susceptible to the idiomotor reflex because they'll never play with a Ouija board. They absolutely believe a Hasbro board game is the literal key to the real upside down. So, of course, American Christianity has always hated spiritualism and its offshoots. Nobody wants competition among the credulous, right? So they've long inveighed against Ouija boards, tarot cards, etc. But it wasn't until a Ouija board played a central role in a seminal 1973 movie that the suburban terror of the boards really exploded. It was the gateway through which evil entered Linda Blair's body in William Friedkin's The Exorcist.
Was it really? I've never
kidding.
seen the Exorcist.
Oh, you're kidding.
I've never seen it.
Oh, my God.
Really?
I guess I need to.
It's not just, let's not diverge into this, it's not just a great old horror movie. It's a solidly good movie.
Except
it's
that,
really scary.
except that it's the one movie that Mormons were all told they shouldn't see, and I am very good about obeying the
You have
Mormons.
selected one last commandment by which to live.
No, does she play with the board game in the movie?
Well, that I can't remember,
don't
but
remember
that
that
was so the Exorcist is quote unquote based on a true story, but it was about a boy who had played with a Ouija board, and then an exorcism had to take place. Right.
Okay.
So the story of the Exorcist follows the same path. I can't remember if she does it in the movie, but that's
Right.
how they figure out that the devil got to her. So, so The Exorcist is considered one of the critical pins to fall in the creation of the nightmarish American overreaction to the challenging new cultural forces of the 1970s, known as the Satanic Panic, which we covered pretty in depth in episode 23. And The Exorcist reintroduced the humble Ouija board as the devil's diving board into your children's souls. Such is the power of fiction among the gullible that most Americans took the movie at its word.
Yeah.
Like most Americans believed that the Ouija board was this thing.
It is amazing to me how credulous people, especially believing people, like religious people, are about this. Like, they literally don't bother to even question some of these things. If you say the Amityville Horror was based on a true story,
Yep.
that's done deal.
That's the Bible truth.
You can just say it.
Yeah.
But I mean, when you guys were kids, I remember our mother was terrified of Ouija boards.
Yeah. She was the
Terrified.
living embodiment of the Satanic Panic.
I love it.
for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, and for a while we couldn't have face cards.
Yeah.
Either because those were considered.
Yeah, I don't
evil.
know what that deal is.
We'll have to
is
look
that
at
just
that.
about gambling, or is there more to it?
No, it
Is
was
about tarot
It's-
sort of stuff.
it's-
or-
yeah, we should look into
It was
that.
closer to that. It was closer to the face represented somehow.
Ooh.
So
And truly, what is a jack? Nobody knows.
No one knows.
it's not a title.
That's not
just a guy's name.
I'm the Jack of Earl.
So there are a ton of fascinating examples of how deadly seriously, for real people, have taken Ouija boards. So from authors that claim to have channeled whole novels through it from people on the other side, to a literal mistrial in the 2000s for a murder conviction because jurors were found to be secretly using one to try to get testimony from the victim.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a
The
true.
luckiest murderer in the world.
Well, he had a mistrial, and then he got tried again and still found guilty. So he did it.
All right.
The judge used the Ouija board and found out he did it. So
Yeah, right.
And even to children having found to be having them and shipped off to Christian reindoctrination camps,
Of course.
and all that torturous shit that's great for kids, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a really fascinating example to end with that has significant local cachet for those of us in the Beehive State. In his
That's
excellence,
Utah, for those of you who don't know.
that's the great state of Utah, Brigham Young founder. In his excellent nonfiction book about the tragedy of his seriously fucked up family shot through the heart, Michael Gilmore goes through generations of a torturous family history to arrive at the events surrounding the double murder committed by his brother Gary and his subsequent execution by firing squad in 1977. You guys read that?
I have, yeah.
I haven't read the
Great book.
It's a great book. It's pretty dreadful. I mean, pretty dreary.
It's grim as fuck. But,
Yeah.
But the central, the axle that the thing spins around is the fact that his family is haunted by a story that his mother and aunts swore was the cause of all their woes and Gary's homicidal infamy. You know, never mind that their family had, generational abuse of all kinds, mental illness, alcoholism, abandonment, cyclic poverty, etc. The story his mother's generation is haunted by has to do with his aunt and mother secretly buying a Ouija board as children. And one spooky October night, it probably would have been around 1920. One spooky October night, they huddled on their bedroom floor asking it if anyone was there. When the planchette slid to yes, they gasped. Remember, these were...
What if it had slid to no?
That's the Ouija board equivalent of picking up the phone and pretending to be your answering machine.
The call is coming from inside the house.
Leave a message after the beep. Beep. Remember, these were devout young Mormons who spent considerable time every day asking a spirit to please respond to them via prayer.
Right.
Well, yeah.
This was the only time they'd felt like that had ever happened.
Yeah.
So when they asked the identity of the spirit, it replied, "I am a dead Indian."
Oh, God.
Another sister panicked and ran out screaming, and the girls were busted by their mother, who went berserk because she thought this thing was the real gateway to hell, so she slapped the kids around and demanded that they burn it. But, of course, kids being kids, they hid it instead. And a few nights later...
Because they're curious about this Indian.
Yeah. This is a spooky thing. It's
$22 is a lot of money back then.
So a few nights later, on Halloween, they tiptoed out to the barn and tried again. There, the Indian told them that he was killed for murdering someone, and it's important to point out that there was very well-known local lore that a Ute Indian had been disemboweled nearby by early Mormon settlers for some allegedly murdering someone.
Interesting.
And he wanted revenge. So everybody knew this ghost story, right?
Right.
So they were caught by their furious father, who smashed the board to pieces with an axe, I guess, dissuading them from ever trying that shit again. So in the years that followed this event, there were a series of unfortunate events like accidents, the death of a child, etc., that had the family convinced they were cursed by the spirit. Mm-hmm. Michael's mother even claims to have seen the ghost of a mangled Indian leaning over Gary's crib when he was a baby.
Oh, God.
That's how sticky the ghost stories that adults program into their children's minds can be. Right?
Yeah.
So, of course, they did not contact a murdered Native American seeking revenge, and thus set in motion a series of events that would eventually lead the U.S. Supreme Court to declare capital punishment legal in response to their son and nephew's double murder.
You don't know that. It could have been.
All right, let's ask the board.
Okay.
But members of his family, including Gary, it seems, went to their graves believing an alphabet on cardboard had that kind of power.
I just kind of think if Native Americans could take that level of revenge for the wrongs that have happened to them, history would be very different.
Yeah.
Life in these United States would be a lot more uncomfortable.
So that's kind of the story of the Ouija board, guys. It's a ridiculous thing that has far too great a place in the fevered American mind.
Yeah,
and the fevered Christian mind.
Do not fear the alphabet on a cardboard, as you say. It's not something to be worried about.
And so to take us out of this segment, I shall now conclude with an a cappella rendition of Morrissey's haunting 1989 hit single, Ouija Board. Ouija board, would you work for me? I have got to say
okay, we're going to end now
to an old friend.
Before we get into
Ouija
copyright
board,
trouble,
Ouija board,
I'm going to stop. Moving
would you work for me?
on.